like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now our host.
Hey, welcome to the Supernatural Hour. I'm your host, Raven.
This is Rogue.
I'm Chad.
And this is Klaus.
Perfect.
So tonight's main topic is crop circles, and it's brought to you by Oteos. Awesome, awesome food. If you haven't had a chance, they're in Linden. Go give them a try. Crop circles. Alien, paranormal, or hoax?
Or Earth. Well, I guess that would be your paranormal, huh?
Well, there could be like ghost paranormal and then just nature. So
wouldn't that just be considered supernatural?
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Supernatural events.
Wow.
That's weird. It's like we have an hour we can talk about that.
Yeah, at least part of an hour. The supernatural part of an hour.
Ooh, part of an hour.
We have to rebrand. Dang it.
That's hard.
So crop circles, I think everyone has heard of crop circles.
I'm pretty sure. They haven't been widely popular in the 2000s.
No, they got really crazy back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
60s, 70s, early 80s. Now, they did start back as far back as, that was a really awkward sentence. They actually have recorded crop circles as far back as 1687. But in my lifetime, I just know in the late 70s, early 80s, they went through a rash of popularity.
Yeah, there's a pretty interesting wood carving of a devil making a crop circle that I've seen on a number of the documentaries and YouTube things that I've been watching. And, you know, that's going back to the 1600s that you were talking about, that they, you know, have had that. So crop circles have been around for a long time. Right.
And, you know, part of me says, well, if they were just wildly popular in the 70s, somebody did it as a college prank or just to have fun. And lots of people did it, and then it died out. But if you've got drawings of devils doing it in the early 1600s, it kind of makes you pause. And not that people back then couldn't be pranksters, but I don't know. So if you don't know what a crop circle is, you basically lived under a rock. Let me fill you in just a little bit.
You may have some younger audience that may not know what a crop circle is.
Everybody knows what crop circles are.
I don't know. We could poll. Do you have a way to poll millennials or, you know, Gen Z to see if they really know what a crop circle is?
Do you know what they call Gen Z now?
Oh no, what do they call Gen Z now?
Zoomers.
That's amazing. Okay.
Get it?
From boomers to zoomers.
It's like a play on boomers, and they're the Zoom generation because they've had to go to school on Zoom. Zoomers.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, though.
It is a brilliant name.
Whoever came up with that needs a Nobel Peace Prize.
They really do. Zoomers. Okay. Okay.
But we got to talk about what a crop circle is. Define a crop circle.
Okay, so if you're young and you don't know what a crop circle is, you don't live under a rock.
Is it like a circle in crops or crops in circles?
If you're over the age of 35 and don't know what this is, get out from under your rock. Okay. Just trying to save face there. Sorry. So crop circles are literally that. They're patterns. Most of them are circles because those are the easiest to make. And just these intricate, beautiful patterns, and they're in
cornfields,
wheat
fields.
Personally, if I were a farmer, I would be pissed because it squishes it all down and you lose that part of the crop. So
very true.
Farmers aren't too keen on these, but they're huge. These aren't, 10 feet wide. These are
a couple acres. Yeah.
Acres and
acres. And now, most of them are circles. Circles are incorporated the most, but as we were looking through some, online.
Fractal geometric patterns that are just awesome.
Amazing.
And you couldn't do it in a night. I mean, some of these were amazing. One of them was 5 football fields long by 5 football fields wide.
That is a very large crop circle.
Right, and a lot of them are just patterns. A lot of them... Now, Chad, you were telling me about a YouTube video that you watched where they were equations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one, and it was pi. And it started in the center, and it jagged out a little bit, and went 3 lengths, and then it had a circle, 3 lengths, and then it bumped up a few feet, and then went, what is it, pi's 3.1 something or other.
14159.
Yeah, so it went down one more length, and then it bumped up a circle. It didn't have a circle, but then it bumped up, and then went another thing. So you had a line that represented pi in the circle, and to like 10 digits.
Wow.
And it's really, really amazing. And you can look at it, and it's it's the circle, but it's like, what does that mean? And it's like, that's pi.
But a supernatural or an alien race couldn't go further than 10 digits of pi.
Well, guess it depends on how big you want your crop circle.
Well, if it was 5 football fields by 5 football fields, you got lots of work there.
That's a big field.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go back to, Chad, what you were saying about the picture of the devil making a crop circle.
Uh-huh.
There's actually a woodcut that illustrates this folklore, and it's called the Mowing Devil. There's an English farmer who told a worker that he was feuding with that he would rather pay the devil himself to cut his oat field than pay the fee that this worker demanded. So the source of the harvesting is not unknown or mysterious, but it's indeed Satan himself, complete with a horn and tails that can be seen, doing
in the wood
this,
cutting. Yep.
with the scythe. So that's the one you were talking about.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the story that kind of stems from that one in 1687.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the interesting things about the crop circles, and when they do this, they're not just knocked down. The crops are usually about an inch or two high, and then there's a bend. So that the stalk goes up about an inch or two, and then they're bent over at that point. Not really broken. I mean, they're not broken off, but they're usually bent. So it's a very kind of distinctive pattern on the crops.
Yeah, people aren't going out there with a weed whacker just knocking stuff down. They bend. So they first kind of got popular, the big resurgence, as it were, in Australia in 1966. And in this particular instance, there was a farmer who said he saw a flying saucer rise up from a swampy area, fly away, and then when he went to go and investigate it, he saw a rough circular area of debris, and then the flattened reeds in the grass, like you said, not broken, not cut off, but just kind of bent over. And he just kind of assumed, this was made by, the aliens. And, the police investigators went out and they're looking at it and they're like, it's probably, something that's been made by a water spout or a dust devil. And they didn't call them crop circles at the time. They called them flying saucer nests.
Because this is where they thought UFOs landed, correct?
Mm-hmm. So circles in grass can be natural. I mean, how many times have you put a kiddie pool out in the backyard and it sat there for a week and you move it and...
Yeah, but that's usually because it's still man-made, though. You put an object on the grass that is circle.
Right.
To cause that.
Right, exactly. So a lot of people are saying, it's because of something, or it's disease, or... there's just a lot of times where, circles happen. You drop weed killer and you gotta...
Well, it also, I was going to say a sploosh. I was going to say it disperses from the original source, but we can call it splooshing.
Sploosh.
It's sploosh.
That's the difference between how my brain works and how normal people's brains work.
I dropped some water and it splooshed.
A lot of these crop circles, even though that's not what they were called at the time that appeared, are sometimes attributed to fairies. Some people think that it's caused by disease. I'm not sure where I sit with these, honestly. The interesting thing is no one has ever been caught making one of these. Ever. That's been recorded.
Interesting. Because I've also seen documentaries or videos about how it could be potentially a hoax where they get like a multitude of people that go out there with a board and not even a board, it's like a PVC pipe and string, and they're able to bend the crop down without breaking it, because that was one of the things, if it was man-made and if people were stepping on it, they'd be breaking the stalk or whatever. And they were showing that, okay, we can do that, we can do this in 5 feet sections, and you hit this rod and you bend it, and it bends it. It doesn't snap it. It bends it. And like you could do this if you had a group of 10, 20 people. You could do this in a night, but you would think you could hear 10, 20 people running around in a forest. Well, not in a forest, but in a field, and hearing rustling.
And when you get 10 and 20 people together, how often can they not keep their mouth shut?
Yeah, that's very difficult.
About things that go on. I mean, in law enforcement, so many of the crimes are found out about because people just can't keep their mouth shut.
Right. And even just physically there at night, sound carries so much better, no matter how quiet you are. I mean, you'd have to be out there and just be totally silent.
Yeah, and I am sure there's a certain percentage that are hoaxes of some kind. In fact, there were a couple of guys in the 70s for about 10 years in England that would go out every Friday night and make crop circles, and they never got caught. And there's a whole documentary on them, and so a lot of people ascribe all crop circles as the hoax. I mean, this guy's wife didn't even know that it was going on. He'd go out, and they were both kind of artists, and they were older guys, and they'd go out and have a board with a rope and make the crop circles. And a lot of the crop circles in England, they're around Stonehenge, in the 1970s and the 80s, were them doing this about every Friday night because they just had such a good time doing it.
Now, this does remind me of the most recent monoliths in Utah. I don't remember, was it 2021, 2020? Those 2 years just blend together really well.
Uh-huh.
But we had that monolith thing that came up in the middle of, in the desert. People were like, where did this giant monolith come from? I guess that could be considered this generation's crop circle because it also popped up in other places around the world. And then come to find out that it was just an artist who would, illegally drop these monoliths or art in natural places. But the problem with that was it was also causing high traffic in non-high traffic areas and damaging the wildlife.
Because everybody'd come to see them.
Yep. Once people found out where they were, they'd go find them and cause issues.
Little squirrel thing, same thing. There's some giant trees. I was watching a very interesting YouTube video about the tallest trees in the world, and there's a number of them that it's like, and they're in this general area, but we're not telling you where because foot traffic will probably destroy the environment in which they're in and possibly kill them.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. So you get art out in environmentally sensitive areas, and it can be very devastating to the environment.
Now, you could definitely, like with those crop circles, in my mind, I could definitely see a farmer who's struggling with money and being able to do this to bring some sort of cash revenue in. Mm-hmm. To be like, hey, I'm struggling with my farm. I'm going to get me and 10 of my best friends. We're going to go do this.
And then be like,
I didn't know, right? And that definitely can bring some revenue in because now people are coming to see your crop circle and you're paying per head or whatever. I mean, there's definitely, I can understand the aspect of a hoax when it comes to crop circles, but at the same time, there's some of them that are just so meticulously detailed and oriented that in the 70s where you didn't have drones, where you didn't have an aerial,
easy way to see it.
Exactly. Like nowadays you have a drone, you can get a person out with a drone. Drones are loud, don't get me wrong, but if you had a drone, you could get an aerial view of whatever you're doing and be like, I need to go this way, just a hair, keep going, and it would make crop circles so much easier, I would think, this time of day or this time year and age.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people thought that they could be attributed to disease, and I'm totally on board with that. Circles in nature are extremely common, extremely easy.
Fungus circles and all sorts of things.
Mushroom circles. But to me, it's going to be a little randomized, and some of these patterns that you see, you look at it and say, that's not disease. Yeah, maybe that one is a disease, but not this whole intricate Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah, or fractals, or pi, or pi.
So it was in the heyday of these went from about 1966 to the early 90s. So, yeah, you have to be very young to know about this.
They made a movie about this kind of crap, in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was called Sign, a documentary called Signs, right? M. Night Shyamalan, great documentary.
Yeah, with
Joaquin Phoenix.
And Braveheart dude.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Was Bryce Howard in it? She's in all of his.
These documentaries are so hard to keep track.
Kind of an interesting movie.
So in 1996, though, it was July of 1996, probably the most at the time. Up to that time, I don't know what's happened since then, but one of the most complex and spectacular crop circles actually appeared in England, and it was just right across from Stonehenge, just there in southwest England. And it was a fractal pattern, and I think they call it the Julia set. The Julia set. And rough circles, circular patterns can be explained as, weather phenomenon and disease and some of these things we've already talked about. But this one was so intricate, so detailed, so big, and it would just unmistakably demonstrated intelligence. Everyone that saw it was like, yeah, that didn't just happen. That had to have been planned out. It had to have been calculated. And so then everyone started to say, aliens. I mean, they'd been saying aliens since 1966, but, the alien thing kind of came back and was big, that it's aliens that did it.
Yeah, and it goes on beyond.
However, that was revealed that 3 hoaxers did that. Are you going to get to that?
Yes. But that's okay. We can jump to it.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we did get to the fact that was a hoax.
Yeah, this one was. It actually appeared in less than an hour, and it happened during the daytime. It wasn't there in the morning, and by evening it was. And a lot of people at the time thought it would be hard for hoaxers to do that, to flatten it down in the middle of the day. Because I don't know if you have been to Stonehenge, but I mean, it's out in the country, but it's Stonehenge, and there's people out there. It's not like out in the boonies where no one goes.
But they're not looking at the crop field across the street from Stonehenge. They're looking at Stonehenge.
Well, there's something else to look at as you're driving to Stonehenge.
Other than crops. But have you ever seen the middle of a crop from outside the crop?
Yeah, you can't really see the middle of it.
You really can't get into the middle of it.
So it actually became one of the most famous at the time, crop circles. But it was revealed later that 3 hoaxers had done it in about 3 hours, very early in the morning. It just hadn't been noticed until an airplane had flown over it and said, hey, that's kind of cool.
That's interesting. When you're talking about England, in one of the videos that I was watching, they were talking in 2014, there were over 2,000 crop circles in England. Most of them were concentrated down near that Stonehenge area, not all of them, but there. But that same year in 2014, and you said this is kind of dying out, they said there was over 4,700 recorded worldwide. So there are a lot of crop circles out there. I don't know what the numbers are, now, but that was a 2014 documentary that I was watching about the crop circles and the Naztec lines, which were kind of interesting too. It kind of throws into that same geometric thing. And what were those about?
Right. So the one thing that one of the sites that I researched, that crop circles are a mysterious phenomenon. Some have been there, like Rogue said, like Chad said. Some have come out to be hoaxes. Some people have claimed to do it. The guy and his friends and sons, we go out and do it every Friday night. But that only accounts for just a very, very small fraction of the ones that are out there. But unlike psychic powers, unlike ghosts, unlike Bigfoot, this is a mysterious phenomenon that you can actually see and touch and take pictures of and show people and see from airplanes. The mystery is who exactly makes them.
Yep. Yeah.
Bigfoot does. He goes out with his big feet and boom, 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 boom. I mean, that's why we haven't ever seen him. He's good at hiding himself.
He's good at hiding.
Yeah, some people...
So,
go ahead.
So kind of going along with that, when I was at work today, I was pulling some stuff off the printer about crop circles, and someone was there and was telling him what I was doing, and he was telling me that when he grew up in Idaho, his father had a ranch, and they had livestock, tons of cattle, and one time he went out and he found a cow, and the cow's brain had been removed, the udders had been removed, and there was no blood in the area. So that's another one that kind of goes with the crop circles, or, you know, what's doing that is sometimes there's animals in the area also that are being slaughtered in bizarre types of ways.
Right, there's some weird stuff out there, which is an awesome segue into some of so we've talked about hoaxers doing it, we've talked about disease, we've talked about, you know, dust devils, we've talked about aliens. In the 80s, there was actually a very popular theory, probably in a small area, I would hope, that the mysterious circle patterns were accidentally produced by, and I'm just going to read this exactly the way it says it, by especially vigorous sexual activity of horny hedgehogs.
Sonic? Sonic the
Yeah,
Hedgehog?
that might be it.
He's like the only person fast enough that could get around that thing fast, you know, in a night.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, these sexually horny hedgehogs are out there stomping down crops into pie. That makes absolute sense to me. Good night, folks.
And
We're done.
pie is the mathematical equation, not
Wow.
the yummy pastry.
Pastries.
Some other suggestions are that they're wind patterns, you know, that are kind of localized in the area. Some people say maybe some scientifically undetectable energy fields that the Earth puts out. And
Like paranormal?
yes,
Wow, that's
like
weird.
the paranormal.
Wow.
Supernatural?
Supernatural, paranormal.
Dun dun dun. I can't go that low.
Elemental.
Could be earth elementals. And some people think that they're caused by ley lines, the energy from ley lines.
Ley lines is a very interesting subject to go across, to go with. That'd probably be another podcast if you haven't done one already.
We did a very brief podcast. When I say brief, I mean it's a huge subject, and we kind of touched on it years and years ago again in Hefe's basement. So that's when we've actually talked about revisiting.
And we actually talked about it either in the last episode or the episode before. Briefly, we talked about ley lines a little bit.
Just
as
briefly.
Just part of a possible cause for some things.
Yeah. So we'll probably do a ley line episode
Sooner than later.
Anyway, there's a molecular biologist named Horace Drew, and he thinks that the answer to the mysterious crop circles is either alien life or time travelers, and that they're trying to help us navigate our planet, their messages. And he has studied some of these crop circles, and he believes that there are messages in them as believe, there is good out there, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises, and we oppose deception, is how he has interpreted some of the patterns in these crop circles.
Interesting. I mean, Marty McFly coming back from the future, but now technically he's in the past.
Yep.
I have a hard time with time travel. It's like, but what about that?
But as long as they don't see themselves, it doesn't ruin the time-space continuum.
That's
That's why they do it at night.
And that's what we learn in Harry Potter. You just can't see yourself when you have the time turner.
And you've got your reference, your Harry Potter reference in.
Yes, I do.
Way to go.
I may have forgotten in the last one, and no one called me out on it, so no one gets a treat. Okay. But I think, in general, the vast majority of humans believe that humans are doing it, but they're just not getting caught.
It's really interesting because some of them are so beautiful, and you know, if you go out to YouTube and look at some of the different YouTube videos on them, it's just amazing the patterns that are done and how large they are, and for things not to be done. I mean, I think you could do it, and you know, for some of those, kind of like what Klaus was saying, almost commercially. You know, you go out and you do it, and you tell people to come and look at the beautiful designs that you've done, and you know, run a drone in the air and be able to show it from the air and everything else. But it's just they're fascinating.
What are you talking about? Almost every fall I go pay money to go through one.
I know, but you don't see it from the air.
But I go and get lost in those things. I mean, they're mean,
They're cool.
Who doesn't go through a crop circle every fall to go get lost? Sometimes they're haunted, and that's a corn maze. My mistake.
Kind of the same thing.
Kind of the same thing. You got to stomp down some of it so you can walk through it, and they make shapes out of those.
Of course.
The corn bellies.
Yeah. Wilkerson's farm.
Yeah.
Some plugins there.
If you live in Utah, that's where you go for corn mazes. If you don't live in Utah, sorry, I don't know where to go. Okay, so we should probably wrap this up a little bit, but here are just some interesting crop circle facts. With very few exceptions, they involve circles. There's rarely triangles, rectangles, or squares. Sometimes they'll have straight or curved lines, but those are just the easiest to form.
And like half circles and...
Right, but the squares, triangles, those are difficult to map out. There was one that had 3 flying birds, and this was found in 2003 in England. They're usually formed overnight and seen, found in the daytime when it gets light. Crop circles have never been recorded being made, as in, sometimes they've had hoaxers that have gone out and filmed themselves making them, the ones that we know are hoaxers, and if you know it's a hoax and they tell you that you're doing it, then it's just art, right? So they have recorded themselves, but no one has ever caught it like on a camera, like any sort of surveillance camera, or been driving by and thought, what's going on out there? This one tends to make me believe it's more likely humans doing it for fun, but crop circles usually appear in fields that provide reasonably easy public access. Around the world in modern times, since the 1960s, about 10,000 crop circles have been reported and, recorded worldwide. Most of them are in England, but they have been seen in the United States, Japan, Russia, Germany, Australia, and Israel. Just in varying sizes and shapes, mostly circles.
Interesting.
So there you go. So one of the other facts, and I just kind of want to reiterate that because I don't want anyone going out making a ginormous crop circle and saying, Supernatural Hour made us think this would be great. Farmers are not fond of crop circles. We mentioned this a little earlier. Some farmers have been accused of creating some of the formations themselves, like you said earlier, Klaus, but they're typically not happy because it damages them to the point that it really takes a cut out of their profit. Just the foot traffic can damage the soil, which means they have to go in and, do more work to help keep their crops and their farms going. And then, when they find out that there's a crop circle there, then they have to manage the crowd. So it's not just the foot traffic of, you get 10 people going in to make a crop circle, not a big deal, but then you get thousands of people that want to come see it, and that's where the problem comes in. And it says that in general, the money they make by charging visitors is not really worth the damage that they get. So if you've got this great idea to go stomp down your neighbor's field, don't. They look cool, but farmers don't dig it.
And they won't call you an artist either.
No, they'll call you other things. All right, so I think that's it for us for today. Hey, stay spooky, my haunty friends.
Love you, Nicholas.
Hey, good night.
Good night, everyone.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.